Ever wondered how guitar legends make their solos sound so smooth and effortless? In today's lesson, I'm revealing the secret sauce, and that's legato. Stick around and I'll show you how to turn your playing from choppy to silky smooth with just a few simple to learn techniques. These are the same techniques and exercises I've taught for 30 years to help my students dramatically improve their soloing. And by the way, if you're just getting started with soloing, make sure to download my free beginner soloist handbook that I've put together. It's packed with all sorts of scales and arpeggios and reference materials so that you have it all in one place. The link is in the description below. Legato refers to a smooth, connected style of playing where notes flow seamlessly into one another without noticeable gaps or interruptions. As you can hear, that technique makes the notes sound very connected and liquidy sounding. And if you're not great at alternate picking, legato is an excellent way to get more notes without having to pick. But don't worry, we are going to start at the very beginning, so anyone can do this technique for a couple of notes or for an entire phrase if you decide to. In its basic form on guitar, legato is simply hammer-ons and pull-offs. Let's begin with the hammer-ons you will need. Typically you hammer on from one note to a second note. That's a hammer-on. I pick the first note and I tap down my finger to sound out the second note. That sounds great, and if you can't already do a hammer-on like that, I would encourage you to spend time getting that basic hammer-on down. But for playing legato, we want to do 3 notes with 1 pick stroke. The first note is picked, and the second and third notes are hammered on. We're just going to use what is known as a scale fragment, basically a section of a scale. So I'm beginning on the 10th fret here, and going to pick the first note on the 10th fret and then hammer on to the 12th and 13th. You want to make the notes even in their volume and in their length. Obviously, the first pick note tends to be loudest, so you have to really focus on getting good clean hammer-ons so all of the notes are pretty much equal in volume. Now, I'm using a distorted tone here because it's compressed the signal a little bit and it makes it easier to hear the notes that aren't picked. Also, legato tends to work better when you select your bridge pickup back here. It will work on other pickup settings, but the bridge is nice and bright and it makes the notes pop out a bit more. Now let's do pull-offs from the same location. A pull-off is where we pluck the second and third notes by pulling our finger to the side, but we're going to pick the first note. I begin on the 13th fret, and then I pull. Now it's important to not let your hand go too far sideways like this. This is parallel to the neck. You go sideways, you don't tend to pull the notes off as cleanly. It's not always the case, but if you notice players who are really good at legato, you'll see them try to keep their fretting hand very parallel to the neck. Now let's put the hammer-ons and the pull-offs together. So I'm going to pick the 10th fret on the B string, and then I'm going to hammer on my 12th and 13th fret, and then begin the pull-off for the descent. Keeping the notes even in their length and volume will be even harder now, but it's important to build that into your muscle memory. For me as well, I was still turning a bit sideways. I try to make sure that I'm parallel to the neck, but it's hard. So it's just one of those ideals that you want to shoot for. It's not always about playing something fast. You want to play it cleanly and evenly, and it will sound faster than it really is. And ultimately, with legato, we want the notes to sound liquidy and not have a harsh attack like you get with a pick. Now that we've played hammer-ons and pull-offs with 1 scale fragment, let's add a second scale fragment and we will move between the 2. So I'm going to start with this scale fragment on 12, 13, and 15 and do my hammer-ons, pull-offs, and then move to the scale fragment that we began with down below on the 10th fret. Now, as you can see, I didn't even pick the second scale fragment. I just let the slide begin it. But you could pick the second one. But for this purpose, I just wanted to let the whole thing keep going on its own merit. Just to show you that you don't really need to pick every note, and as long as you're making your slides and hammer-ons and pull-offs nice and clean, you can keep it going. Movements like this may take time to not only play evenly, but to keep everything clean and not have too much extra string noise. Now when you do pull-offs, it's easy to hit adjacent strings and cause unwanted noise. So you'll really need to focus on muting adjacent strings as you play through these scale fragments, whether it's with your fretting hand or with your hand down here. Let's continue on and add one more scale fragment. This time I'm going to begin on the 13th, 15th, and 17th fret. So you can connect these scale fragments and move around as much as you want to create your own phrasing and licks. They're quite fun to experiment with, but you don't have to stick to this pattern of hammer-ons and pull-offs that we just did. Try something like this here where I play, or rather pick, the first note of a 6-note grouping and then hammer on and pull off the rest. Now I know I've used that pattern to mix things up as I descend across strings, for instance. As you get better, I'm sure you'll find that certain scale fragments and fingerings work better for you. And I would play into your strengths. Don't make it unnecessarily hard. Use the patterns that work well for you and your fingers and get the most out of them. I'm not encouraging you to not try harder ones. I'm only making sure that you get the most out of the easier ones first, because there's a lot to explore there. And when you mix picked notes with legato, all sorts of possibilities come about. Take for instance this more advanced lick that moves through scale fragments. As you can see, you don't have to pick through all of those notes, and I certainly didn't, and I'm not really that good at playing that kind of a lick. I need to work on that more and clean it up, as you could hear. But if you pick some of those notes and use legato for the rest, it makes it easier to play and still sounds quite good. I know Paul Gilbert has mentioned this many times. He's a great picker, but sometimes a lot of his notes are legato, and he just makes sure he equalizes the volume of his picked and non-picked notes the best he can. As with any other technique you're working on for your soloing, keep it simple and your playing will advance quicker. Trying to do too much at once will slow your learning down and frustrate you. In fact, I recently made a video about limitation exercises that will help any player learn to be more musical and melodic by simplifying what you play. You can watch that video next, right here.